Hi everyone, welcome to Architecture 5610. This is Tyler Young, and today I'm going to show you some really preliminary stuff to get you started in Rhino. If you've never opened up Rhino, this down here is the icons, the little Rhino guy, number 7. So I'm just going to open that up, and you'll always get this little front kind of welcome page. So you can open files from your file explorer, you can open recent files, and then you can also go to new, which is what I want you to do. So if you would follow along with this, open up Rhino, and I think this will kind of be worth your time to just kind of explore as we go along here. And you can always rewatch this video if you find anything that you really want to come back to. So that's my advice. So this new tab here gives you the Rhino default template. And you can see that this one here is in bold, and so this is my default template, and I believe it would be yours too. However, you might realize that your units are set up in meters or something like that, so maybe it's not the default template. But so if before we go on, try to click this, and if you have pulled your mouse off of this screen, you'll see that it disappears. And so if you kind of missed that little opportunity, you moved your mouse too soon and that window disappeared, don't worry too much, because you can go down here to the bottom left. It should say some unit of measurement. Mine says feet. Yours could say meters or miles or something. But so you'll just right click on that and go to unit settings. And then we'll have a look at this page here. So this is the document properties. You can also get to this window by typing in options right here in the command line. I'll show you more on that in a second. But so the model units here should be feet. You just click this drop down and make sure feet is selected. And then the distance display, we would like to have that as feet and inches. And then this display precision can be kind of a weird thing. Basically, this is how much the computer is going to round. I would say go to 1/8 inch, and that's a good starting point. And then it's also kind of helpful when you think about if you're making a paper model, or any kind of physical model to scale. You might do something that's 1/8 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch equals a foot. So at that point, you might want to revisit this. But for right now, let's go with 1/8. So follow along. And just click 1/8 here, and then hit OK. Rhino always gives you these four little windows here. We have top view up to the left. We have front, right, and perspective. So top would essentially be your plan view. Top down, you can see the floor, you could see the roof, whatever. Front, we could see the front of the building. You can kind of like standing outside of it. Right, kind of the same thing as front. And then we have perspective. So I'll just kind of show you perspective just so you can kind of play around in Rhino, which I really encourage you guys, just start clicking buttons. If we go into the perspective mode, or viewport, I just have to double click that kind of tab there, and that makes it like the dominant view. This is the C-plane. That's essentially what you could think of as like ground level in Rhino. That's like this little intersection here is the origin. So anything that you might import or export from Rhino into some other CAD software or into some kind of drawing software, they will also have some sort of an origin in mind. And so it's good to be near the origin. If you're like really far away from the origin, sometimes things get kind of confusing. Try to operate near the origin or just like kind of in the vicinity of it. You can always move things to and from around, like the origin within Rhino here. Exploring the buttons of Rhino. I'm just zooming in and out here with the scroll wheel on the mouse. The right mouse button is to orbit. And in 3D, you have orbit. If you click over to the top view, so I'm just going down here to the bottom left and just clicking that tab. But so in top view, since it's not 3D, you can't orbit, you can only pan. So I'm just holding my right mouse button and I'm just holding that and dragging the mouse, and then I'm able to pan up and down and in any direction. Whereas in perspective, I'm able to do the same thing, but it's an orbit. And then to do pan and only pan, you would hold shift and then right mouse button at the same time. So now that you're used to moving around and orbiting around in Rhino and panning and everything, the next thing you're probably wondering is, okay, well, how do I start creating stuff in Rhino? So really, you have a lot of tools here off to the left side of your screen in this little main toolbar. So there's a point command, which is probably rarely used, but you can make a dimensionless point. Very useful in very specific situations. You can create lines. You're a line segment. You can use this polyline command in the same way and click once, but then continue to click, and you can hold shift to lock it into an orthogonal orientation. And then you can also like return to the starting point of this polyline to create like a closed shape. You can see that there's like a circle, ellipse, and an arc command, a rectangle command. There's also polygon. There's this command and this drop down here, which is a whole big series of how to like kind of modify curves, which is what Rhino calls any sort of line situation, whether it's a singular straight line or a system of lines to like a closed polyline. Rhino identifies all of those as curves. And then moving on from there, you have also the kind of surface commands, which are, not quite a solid, but not quite a line. They're a plane, but more specifically than this sort of shape, which is technically it's a planar shape. These surfaces here, if I were to just jump into here, are actually giving us like a panel that is opaque. So end up like a piece of paper almost. So then there's also the more volumetric commands, which would be like this box, for example. So it just asks you to click a start point, click an opposite corner point, and then click in for a height. So all of these things that I'm doing, you can also do this in a more specific way. So if you wanted to draw a line and you want it to be orthogonal, you can turn this button down here to the bottom left where that says ortho, and that way it's always 90 degrees. And you can type in a length just on your keyboard. So like I'll just type in 10 feet and then click and then hit enter. And then that's how you can get a line that is 10 feet long. And then you can also kind of investigate things as you go. So if you're not sure that what you made was in fact 10 feet long, you can type in the command length, and now it just tells you that was 10 feet long. If you want to hit spacebar, you can repeat the previous command, and then you can actually just be prompted. It says select curves to measure. So now I can just select the edge of this big rectangular prism that I made, and it's telling me that it's 5 foot 10 and 1/16. So that's really how you can kind of get started. And my advice before you jump into the next video is to actually just start exploring some of these commands. You have text tools. I guess I can show you. You have the explode command, which is if you have a curve that is a closed curve, you can hit explode, and now it'll be all separate curves. And you can do the same thing to transform a volume into a series of surfaces. So if I select this solid here and use the explode command, now all of a sudden I have 6 surfaces. And as you go through all these commands, the important thing to remember is that Rhino is really convenient in that rather than forcing you to always find the right button and remember where the buttons are, if you can think of the word, or if you can think of a word that's kind of similar to what you want. So I'm not sure if this is going to work, but I typed in box, or I used the box command. If I type in cube, what's going to happen? It's going to say center of cube. Now all of a sudden I've created a perfect cube. This was the box command, which was a little bit different because it didn't, force it to be perfectly even on all faces. So this is, a little bit. It can be any shape that it wants to, or any ratio of a rectangular prism that it wants to be. But yeah, so kind of start typing in commands, start using some of the commands that are here, and jump into the next video when you're ready. So thanks.